Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 Season 28 video on the best builds. In this video, we're going to take a look at the top 10 best builds that you can play in Season 28 for solo Greater Rift pushing, and we're going to group about 50 of the top builds in this game into a tier list of their relative power. This video is brought to you in collaboration with the Diablo 3 experts over at maxroll.gg. We're a think tank of some of the top Diablo 3 players who you'll be seeing top in the leaderboards, combine their brain power, play experience, and the power of mathematics to figure out what the best builds of Season 28 will be. Feel free to reference the timestamps in the description below to skip ahead to different sections. But before we move on, a quick word from this video's sponsor, GNC. For Season 28 of Diablo 3, GNC is partnering with myself and other Diablo 3 streamers, Rax, Woodijo, and Seattle Witch. Because while we've been focused on bringing you guides and tips on how to do your best in-game, you won't be able to do your best if your body and your mind is tired and sluggish, and that's where GNC comes in. They want to help bring nutritious snacks and supplements to gamers that'll give us the energy and focus that we need to blast long gaming sessions at peak performance, while also taking care of our physical and our mental health. We've actually been working together for weeks testing their products and having meetings with GNC to give them feedback on what works for gamers. And any gamer interested can sign up to be part of GNC X Innovations to join the focus groups. What I love most about GNC is that they spend hours and hours reading scientific papers before formulating their recipes. Now, while GNC has a ton of products covering pretty much anything that you need, here's 7 that have been handpicked as a sort of gamer's starter pack. The Amplified Focus Supplement has caffeine and other brain boosters to fuel mental clarity. Their layered protein bars make for healthy and delicious snacks while gaming. Their lutein supplement helps with eye health since we're staring at a screen for hours. Then if your sleep schedule gets messed up like mine and you have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep, their Tri-Sleep caplets will help you out. If you want a complete daily multivitamin regimen, they have their VitaPack program. I've been taking multivitamins my whole life. Then if you also exercise, which we do recommend, their Lit on-the-go energy drink will give you a nice energy and endurance buff, and after your workout, the protein blend makes for a great recovery drink to feed those tired muscles. GNC has more gamer-specific products launching soon as well, so if you want to pick up any GNC products or join the GNC X Innovations program, scan the QR code on screen or follow the link in the description, and use code Rhykker15 to get a discount on any single item. So let's move into the tier list itself, and put up the Season 27 tier list to compare what has changed. As a refresher, our tiers are measured in terms of relative power compared to S-tier builds, which are the best builds in the game. The S-tier builds are the ones expected to be topping the leaderboards by the end of the season. The key here with the tier list is again relative power. If you personally can clear a Greater Rift 100 with a B-tier build, then with an S-tier build you should be able to clear a GR 110. Now, Season 28 sees the introduction of the Altar of Rights, a new tremendous source of power for all characters. As you eventually unlock every seal in the Altar of Rights, you'll find yourself more powerful than you've ever been and clearing higher Greater Rifts than you have ever cleared before. We have a full video on the Altar of Rights, how to use it, the best seals to take, and how to farm the Ubers, the Staff of Herding, the set dungeon pages, the Whispers of Atonement, everything that you need to complete your altar. In Season 27, we had sanctified items, which benefited some builds more than others. Those are gone now, so a lot of movement that you're going to see downward in this tier list is because of the loss of sanctified items. And builds that didn't really benefit from sanctified items instead see a rise this season. Remember, the tier list is relative. Now, additionally, we saw a number of buffs and reworks to different builds this season, which is leading to some rises as well. We'll handle those on a case-by-case basis. As a reminder, when you see a red arrow on the tier list, that means the build dropped a tier. A green arrow means it rose a tier. 2 arrows means a movement of 2 or more tiers. A star indicates that this is a new build, and a little sack indicates that the build uses a set that's part of the season's Hadrig's gift. That's the starter set that you can earn via the season journey. Later in this video, we'll also cover which class gets the best starter set. So let's dive into the Season 28 tier list, starting with the F tier. F as in feeling lonely. The Demon Hunter's Natalia set got a rework this season and vanished from the F tier, leaving only the Witch Doctor's Arakir chicken build in this tier. And it's more of a meme build at this point. Bad for pushing, but great and hilarious for speedruns. So let's move right on to the D tier. D as in, don't bother pushing Greater Rifts with these builds. D tier builds cap out at about 20 Greater Rifts behind the best builds in the game. Can you clear a GR 110 with these? Sure, but you'll have an easier time doing so with other builds on this list. Many of these builds, however, have great speed farming versions. For instance, the Aegis of Valor Heaven's Fury Crusader plummets down here from the A tier last season, but it is the best Crusader build for farming regular rifts, bounties, and even speed greater rifts. And it uses the Crusader's Season 28 starter set. We have a build guide for this build right here. Don't ignore it just because it's in the D tier. Then the Legacy of Dreams Rat Mage Necro build is the Necromancer's best build for speed rifts and bounties. And its Pestilence Corpse Lance build will top the Pestilence set leaderboards, but it is the weakest Necromancer set. The Immortal King Charge Barbarian drops down to D tier. This build has seen better days. Once the best Barbarian build, nowadays there's really no reason to run it apart from nostalgia. Similarly, the Tal Rasha Frozen Orb Wizard has dropped to D tier, and while it was once a great speed build, after the Tal Rasha rework, there's no real reason to run Frozen Orb with Tal Rasha anymore. As for the Helltooth Gargantuan Witch Doctor, this build has dropped down from B tier, and there's a better, more fun Witch Doctor build that uses Helltooth that you can play. And that takes us to the C tier. C as in conveniently free of any Hadrig's gifts. None of these builds use the starter set for the season, so I suspect few people will run any C tier builds. C tier builds are up to 15 greater rifts behind the best builds in the game. Again, these are perfectly viable, you can complete your season journey with them, but they're just outclassed by the best builds. For the Barbarian, both Might of the Earth builds are down to C tier. Fun set, but C tier is the best that Might of the Earth can do. Then dropping down from A tier is the Immortal King Hammer of the Ancients build. This one hurts. It was a really fun build, but losing the Sanctified items was a huge loss for it. This is, however, the best Immortal King build. For the Witch Doctor, we have 3 builds dropping from B tier. The Helltooth Zombie Bears build, that's going to be the best Helltooth build. The Jade Harvester build will top the Jade set leaderboards, but they're both outclassed by much better Witch Doctor builds. Then the Legacy of Dreams Spirit Barrage build barely has a reason to exist, since there's another better build that uses Spirit Barrage and a better Legacy of Dreams build for Witch Doctor. For Wizard, the Delzier's Magnum Opus Frozen Orb build plummets down from A tier. It's neither the best Delzier build nor the best Frozen Orb build. For Crusader, the Roland Sweep build will top the Roland set leaderboard, and the Legacy of Dreams Blessed Shield build is just a fun build to play. You toss around your shield like Captain America, but it's not winning any prizes. For the Necromancer, the Inarius Poison Scythe build stays in C tier, but it's neither the best Inarius build nor the best Poison Scythe build. And for Monk, the Uliana Exploding Palm build craters down from the A tier, though this is the build that will top the Uliana leaderboards. And the Legacy of Dreams Tempest Rush Monk drops from B tier, and it's the weakest version of Tempest Rush that you can run. It also won't be topping the Monk's no-set leaderboards. And that takes us to the B tier. B as in better than a lot of other builds. B tier builds are up to 10 GRs behind S tier, and we see some fan-favorite builds in here. For the Barbarian, the classic Whirlwind build drops into B tier, but Whirlwind is the best Barbarian build for farming rifts and bounties, and it's decent at speed farming greater rifts as well. For the Wizard, the Typhon Hydra build is in B tier. It got buffed this season to deal double damage now. This is the starter set for Wizards in Season 28, and it's the best Wizard build for farming rifts and bounties. And it's not too bad at farming speed greater rifts as well. We have a build guide on the Typhon Wizard right here. The Legacy of Dreams Frozen Orb build drops from A tier. This is the best Frozen Orb build, and it's really good at farming rifts. Then we have 2 Veer builds. The Veer Chantoto Classic Archon build, and the Veer Reverse Archon build. Reverse Archon is technically the best Veer build, but not by much, and the regular Veer build is a lot easier to play. Then we have the DMO Twister build. This build will top the Delzier's Magnum Opus leaderboards, but it's not the best Twister build. For the Witch Doctor, the Arakir Spider build drops from A tier. This build will top the Arakir set leaderboards. And then the Legacy of Nightmares Poison Dart build drops from A tier as well. This build will top the Witch Doctor's no-set leaderboard. For the Monk, we have 3 Sunwuko builds. The Wave of Light build drops from A tier, the Lashing Tailkick build rises from the C tier, and the Tempest Rush build remains in B. Of these, the Wave of Light is the best, and is a really great speed farming build. In this tier, we also have the Raiment Generator build, which drops from A tier despite getting buffed and reworked this season. You see, the patch reworked the Monk's Combination Strike passive, making each Spirit Generator you use increase the damage of your other Spirit Generators by 100% for 10 seconds. This used to only give a 10% buff for 3 seconds. So, huge damage buff, right? We also got other buffs to generators to encourage their use. So, what happened? Why isn't Raiment flying high in the S tier? Well, with the build, you're now working in a third basic attack, a third generator. In order to do that, you have to drop a utility skill. And unfortunately, this kind of works out just to be a wash. The Raiment's main problem has been survivability and ease of play. Removing a utility skill to make room for something that will basically just add another damage multiplier doesn't help the underlying issues with the build. Then for the Demon Hunter, we have the Gears of the Dreadlands build, which got a nice buff this patch to deal almost double damage. This build may not be the best at pushing solo greater rifts, but it is the best at doing rifts, bounties, and speed greater rifts in no time at all. And it's the starter set for the Demon Hunter this season. We also have in this tier the Shadow Impale build, dropping down from the A tier. This build is really strong early season because it's very easy to gear, but there's a better Demon Hunter build for pretty much every purpose at this point, apart from being the best Rift Guardian killer in group play, at least for Demon Hunters. For the Crusader, we have 3 builds here: the Invoker Thorns build, the Blessed Hammer build, and the Akan Bombardment build. This Thorns build will top the Invoker leaderboards. This Blessed Hammer build will top the Seeker of the Light leaderboards, but the Akan Bombardment build is in a weird place. There's a better Akan build and a better Bombardment build. Then for the Necromancer, we have the Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe build. This is the best generator build for Necromancer, but it will not be topping the no-set leaderboard for Necros. And that takes us into the A tier. A as in awesome builds. These are only up to 5 GRs behind S tier builds. Don't let anyone try to shame you out of playing one of these. If you prefer the playstyle of one of these to an S tier build, then you'll be more motivated to play and will likely push further than with a build you dislike but that is technically stronger by a few greater rift levels. So in this tier for the Monk, we have the Inna Mystic Ally build, rising from the B tier, along with a Patterns of Justice Tempest Rush build. Both of these are solid, all-around builds for the Monk. They will top their own class set leaderboards respectively, but won't be the #1 Monk pushing build. For speed farming, they're both great, though the Inna Monk squeezes ahead in both speed and ease of play. Inna is one of my favorite builds, and it's arguably the best all-around Monk build for most players. Patterns of Justice is the starter set for Monk, however, and it's about equally as strong as the Inna Monk. In most applications, it just takes a bit more skill to pull off, while Inna is a pretty brain-dead build. Then for the Wizard, we have quite a few builds here. The Legacy of Dreams Twister Wizard remains in B tier, and the Legacy of Dreams Hydra Wizard rises from the C tier. Neither is the best Legacy of Dreams build for Wizard though, but these are the best Twister and Hydra builds respectively. Between these two, the Hydra one is easier to play, and neither of these builds really has good applications outside of pushing greater rifts. Then we have 3 Firebird builds here. The Firebird set tops out in A tier. We have the Firebird Meteor build, but there are stronger Meteor builds. Then we have the Firebird Explosive Blast build and the Firebird Flame Blames build, both rising from the B tier. These two are about equally powerful, but entail different playstyles. One uses Flame Blades to spam basic attack, and the other doesn't. Instead, it sits and channels. Explosive Blast is better at rifts and bounties, but Flame Blades is better at farming greater rifts. But neither is the best wizard build for anything. Then for the Barbarian, we have the Legacy of Dreams Hammer of the Ancients build dropping from S tier. This build will top the no-set leaderboards for Barbarian, but it's not great at much else. And this leads us into our top 10 builds of Season 28. Now, some clarity on our top 10 here. These are not just the 10 strongest builds for greater rift pushing in the game. These are our top 10 recommended builds to play, factoring in their overall power, their power relative to other builds that their class offers, and their ease of play and ease of gearing relative to other builds. So, if we have 2 nearly identical builds of near equal power, we'll just recommend one of them, since you should clearly pick one over the other. We're not going to give one 8th place and one 7th place. So this does mean that we have more than 10 builds left to talk about, and not all of the top 10 will be in the S tier. Remember, A tier builds are still excellent. So coming in at number 10, for the Barbarian, we have the Savage Frenzy build, rising from the B tier thanks to a buff this patch that doubles its damage. The Frenzy Barb will top the Horde of the 90 Savages leaderboards, and it's also a great rifting build and one of the Barbarian's best speed Greater Rifting builds. And it's also the starter set for Barbarians this season. We have a full guide on the Frenzy Barb right here. For the Crusader, we top out at A tier this season. The Akan Condemn build will top the Akan leaderboards. The Heaven's Fury build will top the Aegis of Valor leaderboards. And then coming in at number 9 on our top 10 list, we have the Legacy of Nightmares Bombardment build, which will top the no-set leaderboards for Crusader, and will be the best build for pushing Greater Rifts for Crusaders this season. Though, it is a tight race between these. Then for Demon Hunter. The Demon Hunter has no S-tier builds this season, but it has 4 excellent builds that are relatively close in power for Greater Rift pushing. Coming in at number 8, we have the Unhallowed Essence Multi-Shot Demon Hunter. The UE set got a massive buff this season. It's dealing 5 times the damage it used to. So the Multi-Shot build rises up from the B tier, and the Hungering Arrow build shoots up from D tier. The Multi-Shot build competes with the GOD build for speed content, rifts, bounties, speed Greater Rifts, and now it's blasting ahead of GOD in terms of pushing Greater Rifts. The Hungering Arrow build is roughly as strong as a Multi-Shot build for pushing Greater Rifts. It'll be a tight race to see which one tops the Unhallowed Essence leaderboards at the end of the season. It deals much more single target damage than Multi-Shot, but it's also much more difficult to play. Overall, Multi-Shot is just the better, well-rounded choice. We have a full guide on Unhallowed Essence Multi-Shot right here. This will likely be my main build for Season 28. Then, the Marauder Sentry build drops down from the S tier, and it may or may not be the best build for pushing Greater Rifts. It's slow and methodical, it's the perfect kind of build for Greater Rift pushing, but it may be beaten by our number 7 build on our top 10 list. The new Natalia Demon Hunter. The Natalia set got a complete rework this season. It is now a set that uses caltrops and spike traps and has a similar, slow, methodical playstyle to Marauder. We didn't get to test this build on the PTR, or we did get to test it, but then the patch notes after PTR gave us a complete rework of the rework. Early testing and theory crafting this week is placing this build in the A tier, and it's looking like it has the potential to be the best build for pushing Greater Rifts, especially if people discover more ways to optimize it over the coming days and weeks. Be sure to check back in frequently on maxroll.gg to see updates to the Natalia guide. Then for the Necromancer, we have the Legacy of Dreams Corpse Explosion build. Lots of fun to blow up corpses, but this build won't top the no-set leaderboard for Necro. Then, dropping down from S tier, we have the Rothma Army of the Dead build. This build will top the Rothma leaderboards, and it's good at speed farming Greater Rifts as well. But the big star of the A tier, coming in at number 6 on our top 10 list, is the Bone Spear build, rising up all the way from C tier thanks to some massive buffs that came with this patch. And the bonus? This build uses the Season 28 starter set. It makes for a decent rifting build and speed Greater Rifting build, and it's just tons of fun. We have a full video guide on Bone Spear and all its variants over here. Then, coming in at number 5, for the Witch Doctor, we have the Mundunugu Spirit Barrage build. This will top the Mundunugu leaderboards, and it's the best Spirit Barrage build. It's also the starter set for Witch Doctors for Season 28, and honestly, I'm gonna go ahead and call it the best Witch Doctor build all around. Another build can technically push higher, we'll speak about it in a bit, but this build is super strong, and it's the best Witch Doctor build for speed rifts, speed Greater Rifts, and bounties. And that takes us into the S tier. S as in Supreme. These are expected to be the most powerful builds of Season 28. Here we have the Witch Doctor's Zunimasa Poison Dart build, rising from A tier. This is technically the strongest Witch Doctor build, but it's incredibly difficult to play and requires thousands of Paragon levels to outshine Mundunugu. It's squishier than the Legacy of Dreams Poison Dart build, but it deals more damage. But it does basically nothing else outside of Greater Rift pushing. For 99.9% of players, Mundunugu is the best Witch Doctor build. Coming in at number 4, for the Monk, we have the Legacy of Dreams Wave of Light build. This is the best Monk build for just about everything. However, it is much squishier and more difficult to play than the Inna Monk, and you need to be really well geared to perform optimally with it. The best players will run with Wave of Light, but the average player will perform better with Inna. Still, this build is really strong, and Monk players should strive to get the right gear and skill to play it. Then coming in at number 3, for the Barbarian, we have the Rhykker Boulder Toss build that will top the Barbarian leaderboards. It's fun, it's fast, and it's powerful, but the playstyle can be a little on the clunky side, and you will be kinda squishy. Then we have 2 wizard builds, both of them meteor builds. The Legacy of Dreams Bazooka meteor build, which will top the no-set leaderboards for wizard and is technically the strongest wizard build. And then our number 2 build on the top 10 list, the Talrasha Meteor Wizard, which is infinitely easier to play and still one of the most powerful builds in the game. The Talrasha version also is the best wizard build for speed farming Greater Rifts. It's the version I'd recommend most players take, unless you want to really activate hard mode. The Bazooka build involves complex mechanics and skill rotations in which you need to precisely time your use of Archon while lining up other buffs, and then with Talrasha you basically just make Meteor go boom and you win, all while being maybe a couple Greater Rifts weaker in power. We have a full guide on the Talrasha build right here. Then for the Necromancer, we have 3 Death Nova builds in S tier. First, we have the Inarius Death Nova build, which rises from A tier and will top the Inarius leaderboards. Then we have the Legacy of Dreams Death Nova build, which will top the Necromancer's no-set leaderboards. And lastly, we have our number 1 build of Season 28, the Trag'Oul Death Nova build, which will top the Trag'Oul leaderboards. The Trag'Oul Death Nova build is the strongest of the 3, and it'll top the Necromancer leaderboards and likely all leaderboards. It even makes for an excellent trash killer in group play. So that was our top 10, that's our tier list, but before we finish, we said we'd take a look at which class gets the best starter set this season. So, Wizard gets a Typhon set, decent for Greater Rift pushing, great for farming rifts and bounties. Early season, you're going to be farming a lot of rifts and a lot of bounties before you can progress into a Talrasha build to farm Greater Rifts effectively. So this is a good starter. Monk gets Patterns of Justice, good for Greater Rift pushing, excellent for farming rifts, good for farming bounties, decent at farming Greater Rifts. However, it is trickier to get all the gear needed for this build. So overall, decent season starter. The Crusader gets the Aegis of Valor set. This leads to a good Greater Rift pushing build with Heaven's Fury, and the Crusader's best speed farming builds for everything else with Fists of the Heavens. This is the best set that a Crusader can start with. For the Necromancer, the Masquerade set is great for Greater Rift pushing, and it's decent for farming rifts and Greater Rifts. For the Witch Doctor, the Munanugu set is basically the best Witch Doctor set for all content. It's the best set a Witch Doctor can start with, because there's no reason to farm any other set. For the Barbarian, the Horde of the 90 Savages set is good at Greater Rifts, regular Rifts, and speed Greater Rifts, so it's a decent starter. As for the Demon Hunter, Gears of the Dreadlands set is not great for pushing Greater Rifts, but it's excellent for Rifts, Bounties, and speed Greater Rifts. So, factoring in everything together, here's how I rank the starters. First place, Demon Hunter. You'll eventually want to change from Gears of the Dreadlands to something stronger for Greater Rift pushing, but you can farm so much gear and so many Paragon levels before then. Second place goes to the Witch Doctor. You're instantly starting with your best set, and while you can farm as blitzingly fast as other classes, the surprise buffs to Munanugu really help with speed farming. Third place goes to the Wizard. The Typhon set gives you a strong start to farm up your Talrasha set. Fourth place goes to Monk, only because of the difficulty of gearing the Patterns of Justice build to its full capacity. Otherwise, I'd rank this as second place. If you're lucky with gearing, this is a really good starter. Fifth place goes to the Crusader. While you can farm regular rifts like no one's business, and you can push very well with your starter set, you will want something stronger for farming greater rifts. Sixth place goes to the Barbarian. Frenzy is good at a lot of things, but it's not the best at anything. And last place goes to the Necromancer. Bone Spear is tons of fun, but it's just not as efficient at farming as these other class sets. And now, as we wrap up this video, we'll remind you that you can find this tier list on maxroll.gg for easy reference, which will be updated in case of new data and testing. And you can also find the written guides for all the builds and all the resources you could possibly need for Diablo 3. If you're looking for a repository of all my video guides specifically for all classes, you can find those on Rhykker.com. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch, Patreon, and YouTube supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can consider pledging on YouTube or Patreon and unlocking behind-the-scenes content, monthly virtual hangouts, and more. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.